Stranded Australians and New Zealanders anxiously await evacuation from unrest-ridden New Caledonia. Amidst the escalating violence and widespread unrest that have engulfed New Caledonia, hundreds of Australian and New Zealand tourists remain stranded on the island, yearning for a safe passage home. French security forces are relentlessly working to regain control of the highway leading to the international airport, which has been shuttered due to the turmoil. However, pro-independence forces have vowed to maintain roadblocks, paralyzing parts of the territory and hindering efforts to transport stranded tourists. The airport, which offers flights to Australia, Singapore, New Zealand, and other destinations, was forced to close on Tuesday as protests against voting reforms spiraled into widespread violence, leaving a devastating trail of destruction. The clashes have resulted in 6 fatalities and hundreds of injuries, casting an ominous shadow over the island's idyllic allure. The reopening of Noumea-La-Tontuta Airport would provide a lifeline for stranded tourists, enabling them to escape the escalating violence and return to their home countries. An estimated 3,000 tourists are believed to be marooned in New Caledonia, including over 300 Australians and nearly 250 New Zealanders. Governments stand ready to evacuate citizens. The governments of Australia and New Zealand are closely monitoring the situation and coordinating efforts to repatriate their stranded citizens. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has expressed deep concern over the escalating violence and has been seeking approval from French authorities for 2 days to dispatch an evacuation flight to New Caledonia. "We continue to pursue approvals because the Australian Defence Force is ready to fly when it's permitted to do so," Albanese asserted. The foreign ministers of Australia and New Zealand have jointly appealed to French authorities for permission to fly out their nationals. French authorities advise the situation on the ground is preventing flights. "We continue to pursue approvals," Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong stated. New Zealand Foreign Minister Winston Peters emphasised that the safety of New Zealand nationals in New Caledonia remains the utmost priority. "We are ready to fly, and await approval from French authorities as to when our flights are safe to proceed," Peters said. Tourists described sheltering in hotels amid growing concerns. Tourists stranded in New Caledonia have shared harrowing accounts of their experiences, describing sheltering in hotels and facing mounting concerns over food supplies. New Zealander Barbara Graham, who is conducting doctoral research in the capital, witnessed the terrifying scenes unfolding outside her accommodation. "Fires burning out of control, and the black smoke billowing out of the city," Graham recounted. "Multiple shops have been ransacked. The shops that are open, that I've seen, are getting really bare." Australian tourist Tonia Scholes likened Noumea to a war zone, describing burnt cars, barricades, and remnants of fires. "There's people standing on street corners drinking hard liquor and having what almost seems like a party," she said. Scholes expressed gratitude towards local residents who have taken security into their own hands, forming neighborhood watch groups to protect their community. "They have all banded together to protect what is theirs, and they have 24-hour watches. They walk the streets with big torches. That's actually our neighbors protecting us, which is just amazing," she said. Evacuation information remains elusive. Despite the efforts of Australian and New Zealand governments, obtaining reliable information about evacuation options has proven challenging for stranded tourists. Scholes lamented the lack of clear communication from the Australian government. "We're just hoping and waiting for a phone call to say we've got some way of getting you out," she said. Brisbane resident Sophie Jones Bradshaw, who had been working in New Caledonia since May 11, just before the outbreak of violence, expressed anguish over being separated from her family, with no end in sight. "It's getting really hard to see my son every day on the camera," Jones Bradshaw confided. "I'm crying because he wants me to go home. I'm telling him, oh, just one more sleep, but I don't know." Jones Bradshaw described the Caledonian capital as a scene of desolation and chaos. "It feels like a no-man's land," she said, adding that half of Noumea has been burned, with homes and businesses reduced to rubble. "You have to go further and further out to find a shop that hasn't been burned or is not closed." A plea for urgent action. The plight of stranded Australian and New Zealand tourists in New Caledonia represents a humanitarian crisis that requires immediate attention. Governments must prioritize the safety and well-being of their citizens and expedite efforts to secure their evacuation. Timely and coordinated action is imperative to ensure their safe return home amidst the ongoing unrest and devastation that has enveloped this once tranquil island paradise.